My name's Bryn Durgan, and I'm the Director of Programming here. And first of all, I want to say welcome back to a lot of you, a lot of familiar faces up here. And for those of you who it might be your first time in, then welcome into the loft. And regardless, we do want to say thank you, because we wouldn't be able to offer even a fraction of the book clubs and the workshops and the author talks that we do here if it weren't for all of you devoted customers. So it does mean the world to us. Thank you. Now, let me introduce you to one of our absolute favorite writers, the author who's here to share with us about his work, read from his brand new collection that's available right downstairs, and answer some of your questions. Selected by President Obama as the 5th presidential inaugural poet in U.S. history, he was the youngest, the first Latinx, immigrant, and gay person to serve in that role. Earlier this year, he was awarded the National Humanities Medal by President Biden from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Born in Madrid to Cuban exile parents and raised in Miami in a working-class family, his personal negotiation of cultural identity and the universal themes of place and belonging characterize his many collections of poetry, including his most recent, Homeland of My Body. He has also authored the memoirs For All of Us, One Today, An Inaugural Poet's Journey, and The Prince of Los Cocoyos. I probably said that wrong, got it? A Miami Childhood. He's received numerous awards, including the Agnes Sterrett Poetry Prize, the Pan American Beyond Margins Award, the Patterson Prize, and a Lambda Prize for Memoir. He was Woodrow Wilson Fellow and has received multiple honorary degrees, and in April of last year, he was appointed the first ever Poet Laureate of Miami-Dade County. Currently, he serves as Education Ambassador for the Academy of American Poets, and is an Associate Professor at Florida International University. Now let's give the brilliant Richard Blanco a big round of applause.
Thank you, Bryn, and thank you to the bookstore for always doing such great programming. I think I know some of your faces, but is it on? Or?
I think it's not on. There you go.
Hello? Okay, that's better. Yeah. I think this is my 3rd time in Sarasota, so I love spending time here. Thanks to all of you for being here. As you can imagine, writing is somewhat of a solitary endeavor, and these moments like this make you feel like you're alive. This is sort of, I always say this is kind of like the next phase of a poem is when it lives in your eyes and your smiles and tears or whatnot. So you're all a gift to me today, so thank you. They say that every writer is, or every poet at least, is writing one poem all their life. And what that means figuratively, of course, is that there's something there's some central question that usually takes hold of a writer, sometimes, as in my case, at a very early age. And in some ways, their entire body of work is an attempt to not quite answer that question, but explore that question. Maybe it's a question that you never quite answer. For me, that question comes down to a single word, and that's home, and all that great big word calls into mind in terms of community, family, identity, belonging, even sexuality is a sense of home for me. And as I said, it took hold when I was quite young, actually maybe before I was even born. As I like to say, I was made in Cuba, assembled in Spain, and imported to the United States. So my mother leaves Cuba pregnant 7 months. I'm born in Madrid, sort of a pit stop. And 45 days after my birth, we emigrated to the United States. So by the time I was 45 days old, I belonged to 3 countries, to Cuba, Spain, and the United States, and yet to none, really. I didn't really belong to any of them. My newborn photo, my very first newborn photo was my green card photo. So anyway, I think that started in the womb, I was already thinking about questions of home. So when it came to writing, and I should say this is all in retrospect, right? I mean, writing is actually, and this first poem I want to share with you, when I first started writing, my sense, I'm a civil engineer as well. I've been a practicing civil engineer for most of my adult life. So I had a very archaic sense of poetry, and it was all these and thous, and I thought I had to be some British white poet, right? And I was writing about daffodils in Miami, like I'd never even seen a daffodil. So serendipitously, I walk into my first creative writing graduate course that I sat in on, and Professor Campbell McGrath, we read some Whitman, some Frost, and some Ginsberg, and the assignment was write a poem about America. And I thought, what America are these guys talking about, right? So I said, maybe I shouldn't quit my day job. But I went home, scratched my head, and I said, well, here goes nothing. And so I still share this very first poem because it embarked me on that journey. It opened the floodgates of all these questions of home, identity, and belonging that I didn't even really know I had, but of course I did. So, and like I said, that's been my life's work, which is sort of where it is now with all four collections and the new poems. Still keeping me busy, that question. So I'll share this first poem as a departure point, and then maybe share a few more from the older collections, and then share a few of the new poems. So for this poem, you just need to know, for Cubans, pork is not the other white meat, it is the only meat. There's also, Latinos in general don't get Thanksgiving even to this day. We call it Thanksgiving, like San Francisco or San Ignacio or whatnot. And there's a reference here to JFK, and we're all from Florida here in the Bay of Pigs, so I think we know what that's all about. So I titled it appropriately America, and it's kind of a whimsical poem as well. America. Although Tia Medium boasted she discovered at least half a dozen uses for peanut butter, topping for guava shells and syrup, butter substitute for Cuban toast, hair conditioner and relaxer, Mama never knew what to make of the monthly 5-pound jars handed out by the immigration department until my friend Jeff mentioned jelly. There is always pork though, for every birthday and wedding, whole ones on Christmas and New Year's Eve, even on Thanksgiving Day. Pork, fried, broiled, or crispy skin roasted, as well as cauldrons of black beans, fried plantain chips, and yuca con mojito. These items required a special visit to Antonio's Mercado on the corner of 8th Street, where men in guayaberas stood in Senate blaming Kennedy for everything. Ese hijo de puta. A vial of Cuban, some of you know what that is. The vial of Cuban coffee and cigar residue filling the creases of their wrinkled lips, clinging to one another's lives of lost wealth, ashamed and empty as hollow trees. By 7, I had grown suspicious. We were still here. Overheard conversations about returning to Cuba, I had grown wistful and less frequent. I spoke English. My parents didn't. We didn't live in a 2-story house with a maid or wood panel station wagon or vacation camping in Colorado. None of the girls in my family had hair of gold. None of my brothers or cousins were named Greg, Peter, or Marcia. We weren't the Brady Bunch, and none of the black and white characters on Donna Reed or the Dick Van Dyke Show were named Guadalupe, Lázaro, or Mercedes. Patty Duke's family wasn't like us either. They didn't have pork on Thanksgiving. They ate turkey with cranberry sauce. They didn't have yuca, they had yams, like the diddles of pilgrims that I colored in class. So a week before Thanksgiving, I explained to my abuelita about the Indians and the Mayflower, how Lincoln set the slaves free. I explained to my parents about the Purple Mountain's majesty, 1 if by land, 2 if by sea, the cherry tree, the tea party, the amber winds of grain, the masses yearning to be free, liberty and justice for all, until finally they agreed this Thanksgiving we would have turkey, as well as pork. Abuelita prepared the poor fowl as if committing an act of treason, faking her enthusiasm for my sake. Mama set a frozen pumpkin pie in the oven and prepared candied yams, following instructions I had to translate from the marshmallow bag. The table was arrayed with gladiolas. The plattered turkey loomed at the center on silver from Woolworths. I uttered a bilingual blessing, and the turkey was passed around like a game of Russian roulette. Dry, Gilberto complained, and proceeded to drown the lean slices with pork fat drippings and cranberry jelly, la mierda roja esa, as he called it. Faces fell when Mama presented her ochre pie. Pumpkin, calabaza, was a home remedy for ulcers, not a dessert. Maria made 3 rounds of Cuban coffee, then Abuelo and Pepe cleared the living room furniture, put on a Celia Cruz LP, and the entire family began to merengue over the linoleum of our apartment, sweating rum and coffee, until we remembered it was 1976 and 46 degrees in America. So, a quick sort of synopsis of this journey of home. I eventually went to Cuba for the first time in 1994, and that was, of course, an amazing experience to see all these all these stories, all these, I should say my mother left her entire half of her family in Cuba, so I had her eight brothers and sisters, her parents, so I had also this incredible family that I only knew through photos and letters and, you know, family lore and whatnot. So it was amazing, like this pop-up book of your life that you never, you had. At the same time though, it was also more of a Cuba that I couldn't quite access because really I was looking for the Cuba of my parents, right? So there was that, and then of course, even today, it's really hard to have a real relationship with the island for obvious reasons we all know in Florida. So then I decided, well, if I'm not quite Cuban as I thought, maybe I'm really American. And so I left the Republic of Miami. As we like to say, we love living there because it's so close to the United States. And I got a teaching job for a while. I left my engineering in Hartford, Connecticut, thinking, oh boy, I left Miami Beach for Hartford, Connecticut. I thought, this is it. Like sleigh rides in the snow, singing jingle bells in a one-horse hope and say. One country in the visible, me and Martha Stewart doing arts and crafts in Westport. It was gonna be, that's it, I'm American, of course. That didn't quite work out. I mean, I found some of that quintessential New England that I thought was the real America. So then I thought, well, it's not this Cuba, it's not this fictional or fantasized idea of America or romanticized. So I started traveling a lot, always with that same question. Wrote a lot of travel poems, which is the directions to the book, directions to the beach of the day when you read through the book. It's from that collection. Lived in Brazil, lived in Guatemala, lived in DC, and of course, you know, that was sort of a wild goose chase in a way too, right? I think we always travel with that sense of trying to find paradise, right? I came across this quote that shifted my thinking in that direction. It's a quote by Pascal. It says, "The sole cause of a man's unhappiness is that he does not know how to stay quietly in his room." And I thought, what was the room that I left? And I thought, well, maybe it's Miami. I'll just move back to Miami, and thinking this is the only place I belong in the world between two worlds. And of course, that didn't quite work out the first time around. It speaks to the adage, if you can't go home, you can't go back home. At least you can't go back home in the ways that you think, right? You can go back in different, I'm in Miami now, and it's a different experience. Anyway, I, of course, like anybody would, I started going to see all my old haunts and thinking about, taking the proverbial trip down memory lane. And one of those places was Marco Island, because since I was yay high till into my 20s, back when when you could afford Marco Island, we vacationed there a lot, and so I had these wonderful memories of the place. And so this is I went back after not being there like 25 years and thinking surely everything's the same, because everything's the same in my memory. And of course, as we all know, it's changed a lot. So this is my emotional response to it. And in a way, it also opened up something different in me, because I realized this sense of loss or of time, Marco Island sort of became my Cuba, and even though this is about Cuban family, it's in the context of my own life, that this place that I've lost to some degree. And I think we all have a place like this in our life. So I invite you to think about what that place is as I share mine with you. Looking for the Gulf Motel, Marco Island, Florida. There should be nothing here I don't remember. The Gulf Motel with mermaid lampposts and ship's wheel in the lobby should still be rising out of the sand like a cake decoration. My brother and I should still be pretending we don't know our parents, embarrassing us as they roll the luggage cart past the front desk, loaded with our scruffy suitcases, 24 loaves of Cuban bread, brown bags bulging with enough mangoes to last the entire week, our espresso pot, the pressure cooker, and a pork roast streaking garlic through the lobby. All because we can afford to eat out, mijo. Not even on vacation. Only 2 hours from our home in Miami, but far enough away to be thrilled by the wider sands on the west coast of Florida, where I should still be, for the first time, watching the sunset instead of rise over the ocean. There should be nothing here I don't remember. My mother should still be in the kitchenette of the Gulf Motel, her daisy sandals from Kmart still squeaking across the linoleum, still gorgeous, in her teal swimsuit and amber earrings, stirring a pot of arroz con pollo, adding sprinkles of onion powder and dollops of tomato sauce. My father should still be in a terry cloth jacket, smoking, clinking a glass of amber whiskey in the sunset at the Gulf Motel, watching us dive into the pool. Two boys he'll never see grow into men who will be proud of him. There should be nothing here I don't remember. My brother and I should still be playing parcheesi. My father should still be alive, slow dancing with my mother on the sliding glass balcony of the Gulf Motel. No music, only the waves keeping time. A song only their minds hear 10,000 nights back to their life in Cuba. My mother's face should still be wrestling against his bare chest, like the moon resting on the sea. And the stars should still be turning around them. There should be nothing here I don't remember. My brother should still be 13, sneaking around in the bathroom and sculpting naked women from sand. And I should still be 8 years old, dazzled by seashells and how many seconds I can hold my breath underwater. But I'm not. I'm 38, driving up Collier Boulevard, looking for the Gulf Motel, for everything that should still be, but isn't. I want to blend the condos, their shadows for ruining the beach and my past. I want to turn the golf courses back into mangoes. I want to find the Gulf Motel exactly as it was and pretend for a moment nothing I've lost is lost. So the lesson there for me was, do you think I really enjoyed watching my parents dance on the balcony when I was 12 or whatnot? It's the old adage, if you don't know what you have to lose it. So in a way, I did regain Marco Island because I learned to appreciate something that I wouldn't have appreciated if I'd been through that understood that loss. So of course, Miami didn't quite work out the first time, as I said. So what does any normal red-blooded American do? You move to Maine. You take a left instead of a right on I-95 and you just keep on going. So I moved to Maine in 2008, and it was just more curiosity, I think, and just well, it was through my husband's work as well. And I said, why not? I think that should be the model for Maine. Is like, why not? Everybody's like, I don't know, something comes over you, you just move here. And I put the question of home to rest a bit. In the sense, I think partly is I live in rural Maine, and the presence of nature is like the universal home, and there's a great sort of sense of place and peace in that. And as the poet Basho said, life is a journey, and the journey itself is home. So I thought, well, yeah, that makes sense. I'm just here for now, and this is home. Of course, then Obama called and basically gave me the same assignment: write a poem about America. So that's kind of what I told him. I joked with him. I'm like, Dorian, I've been writing this poem for 20 years, right? I've been working on that one poem. So all those questions of home got tossed up back in the air, right? And even at the age back then of 44, the hardest thing about writing the poem was really the question that I was circling around that I didn't want to ask myself was like, do I love this country enough to write a poem? And more importantly, does this country love me back? There's still at 44, I didn't feel like I quite fit the American narrative as an immigrant, as a gay man, as a working class kid. So the poem in some ways very personally is a response to that in the affirmative. No, yes, my narrative is part of that. In a democracy, that's exactly what I would define it, that like our motto says, out of the many one. And not only my narrative, but the people in this poem, that all our narratives, right? I mean, we're still got a lot of work to do, right? But that's still circling around the question of home, just in the larger sense of home as a country, and that became the fourth book, which was How to Love a Country, and thinking about home and place in that context, not just my own private context, but in the context of, well, what is a country? How do we love it? What does that mean, right? So I'll share with you the inaugural poem just to take us back to 2013. And yeah, so I'm gonna read a short excerpt from the memoir, I call it. It's a small memoir about the whole experience from getting the phone call to writing the poems. I made me write 3 poems. I made the Cuban write 3 poems, I don't know what. And meeting Beyonce, that was really cool. So even cooler, meeting James Taylor. So anyway, yeah, here we go. In the moment, I feel America standing as one, putting differences aside and taking a deep collective breath. We pay tribute to something far bigger and more important than any one of us, and I truly feel like one of us, one of we, the people, in the echoes of the president's and others' speeches. I embrace America in a way I never had or thought I could, feeling for the first time that I belong, truly belong, to one country. Not an imaginary ideal from TV or a nostalgic Cuba floating in the sea of my parents' memories, but a real, tangible place that is mine, was mine, all along. Senator Schumer introduces me and calls me up to the podium. My mother squeezes my shoulder. I stand more confident than I imagined I would or could be, transfixed by the moment that is no longer about me or my poem or my glory, but about our country. Still, I'm surprised when the president and vice president stand up to greet me and shake my hand on the way to the podium. They both whisper something in my ear that I can't make out. But their gracious gestures speak silently to my heart, silently, as if saying, Richard, here is your country. This is your story. You are home. I step up to the podium, look out over the crowd, a patchwork quilt of lives, of stories spread across our ground, under our sky, beneath our one sun. I take it all in as I take one deep breath, then another. This is for them. This is for us. For all of us. I think to myself and begin speaking into our wind. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, America, one today. One sun rose on us today, kindled over our shores, peeking over the Smokies, greeting the faces of the Great Lakes, spreading a simple truth across the Great Plains, then charging over the Rockies. One light, waking up rooftops, under each one a story told by our silent gestures, moving behind our windows. My face, your face, millions of faces in morning's mirrors, each one yawning to life, crescendoing into our day. Pencil yellow school buses, the rhythm of traffic lights, fruit stands, apples, limes, and oranges, arrayed like rainbows, begging our praise. Silver trucks heavy with oil or paper, bricks or milk, teeming over highways alongside us, on our way to clean tables, read ledgers, or save lives, to teach geometry or ring up groceries as my mother did for 20 years, so I could write this poem for us today. All of us. As vital as the one light we move through. The same light on blackboards with lessons for the day, equations to solve, history to question, or atoms imagine. The I have a dream, we keep dreaming. Or the impossible vocabulary of sorrow that won't explain the empty deaths of 20 children marked absent today and forever. Many prayers, but one light, breathing color into stained glass windows, life into the faces of bronze statues, warmth onto the steps of our museums and park benches as mothers watch their children slide into the day. One ground, our ground, rooting us to every stalk of corn, every head of wheat sown by sweat and hands, hands gleaning coal or planting windmills in deserts and hilltops that keep us warm, hands digging trenches, hands routing pipes and cables, hands as worn as my father's, cutting sugarcane so my brother and I could have books and shoes. The dust of our farms and deserts, our cities and plains, mingled by one wind, our breath. Breathe. Hear it. Through the day's gorgeous din of honking cabs, buses launching down avenues, the symphony of footsteps, guitars, and screeching subways, the unexpected songbird on your clothesline. Hear squeaky playground swings, trains whistling, or whispers across cafe tables. Hear the doors we open for each other all day, saying, hello, shalom, bonjour, howdy, namaste, or buenos dias, in the language my mother taught me, in every language, spoken into one wind, carrying our lives without prejudice as these words break from my lips. One sky since the Appalachians and Sierras claimed their majesty, and the Mississippi and Colorado worked their way to the sea. Thank the work of our hands, weaving steel into bridges, finishing one more report for the boss on time, stitching another wound or uniform. The first brushstroke on a portrait, or the last floor on the Freedom Tower, jutting into a sky that yields to our resilience, one sky toward which we sometimes lift our eyes, tired from work. Some days guessing at the weather of our lives. Some days giving thanks for love that loves you back. Sometimes praising a mother who knew how to give, or forgiving a father who couldn't give what you wanted. Still, we head home through the gloss of rain and weight of snow, or the plum blush of dust, but always, always home, always under one sky, our sky, and always one moon, like a silent drum tapping on every rooftop and every window of one country. All of us facing the stars and hope. A new constellation, still waiting for us to map it, still waiting for us to name it together. So, obviously we're in a different space right now, but maybe it's my immigrant upbringing, but I still, one of the things the inauguration also taught me is, and also my history is my parents' Cuban history, it's that democracy is a work in progress, right? And we know that now. So I only changed in the poem. It's become more of a manifesto now than a poem. But I did change in the end. I put still waiting for us to map it. Still, I added still, so that we remember there's still work to do. So as I mentioned, this ended up, that whole process of serving as presidential inaugural poet, or PIP, which is much easier to say. Just started me thinking on that larger question of home as our country. So the poems became a little more social political, which is not my typical kind of writing, or at least not, I wouldn't say necessarily social political, but thinking about a poet of social conscience in context of our country and what that means. And so I penned this poem. It's called Mother Country, and it's still inspired autobiographically. Well, inspired by my mother's autobiography. As I said, she left her entire family behind in Cuba, and I always grew up with that sense of sorrow and longing, right? But until this moment, I hadn't realized that my mother's story is also one of incredible faith in the ideals of the country, and that in that way, it dawned on me that my mother is more of an American than I could ever be because of that leap of faith. And so this poem asks us to step into my mother's emotional shoes and think about if we all had to get up out of these seats after you purchase them and pack up a suitcase and leave because this is not going to work anymore. How might we stand up or show up in different ways to save what we have? How might we, if there was that much at stake, how might we participate in ways we've not participated in democracy? So, just thinking about that from my mother's sort of point of view, or my point of view of my mother. Mother Country. Then after this, we'll do some new poems and then questions. Mother Country, or Madre Patria. To love a country as if you've lost one. 1968, my mother leaves Cuba for America, a scene I imagine as if standing in her place. One foot inside a plane destined for a country she knew only as a name, a color on a map, or glossy photos from drugstore magazines. Her other foot anchored to the platform of her patria, her hand clutched around one suitcase, taking only what she needs most. Hand-colored photographs of her family, her wedding veil, the doorknob of her house, a jar of dirt from her backyard, goodbye letters she won't open for years. The sorrowful drone of engines, one last deep breath of familiar air she'll take with her. One last glimpse at all she'd ever known. The palm trees wave goodbye as she steps into the plane. The mountains shrink from her eyes as she lifts off into another life to love a country as if you've lost one. I hear her, once upon a time, reading picture books over my shoulder at bedtime, both of us learning English, sounding out words as strange as the talking animals and fair-haired princes in their pages. I taste her first attempts at macaroni and cheese, but with chorizo and peppers. And her shame over Thanksgiving turkey is always dry, but countered by her perfect pork pernil and garlic yuca. I smell the rain of those mornings huddled as one, under one umbrella, waiting for the bus to her 10-hour days at the cash register. And at night, the zzz, zzz of her sewing her own blouses and quinceañera dresses for her grown nieces still in Cuba, guessing at their sizes. And the gowns she sell to neighbors to save for rusty white sedan, no hubcaps, no air conditioning, sweating all the way through our first vacation to Florida theme parks to love a country as if you've lost one. As if it were you on a plane departing from America forever. Clouds closing like curtains on your country, the last scene in which you're a madman scribbling the names of your favorite flowers, trees, and birds you never see again. Your address and phone number you'd never use again. The color of your father's eyes and your mother's hair, terrified you could somehow, someday, forget these. To love a country. As if I was my mother last spring, hobbling, insisting I help her climb all the way up to the US Capitol, as if she were here before you today instead of me, explaining her tears, her cheeks pink as the cherry blossoms coloring the air that day, when she stopped, turned to me, and said, "You know, Mino, it isn't where you're born that matters. It's where you choose to die. That is your country." New poems. So I'm really nervous with the new poems because they're like children and like they can't talk yet, so they haven't told me how they want to be read or they haven't told me what they mean exactly, and it's weird. That's the creative process. Poems keep on. I always say my poems are smarter than me. They over time you really start uncovering. Even though you wrote them, there's so much of it in there is. So to a certain degree is subconscious, and then you start, okay, that's what, oh my God. So let me so where this book takes off, where the new poems are in the journey of home is, and as the title may imply, maybe because I'm middle-aged now, but also I think the pandemic had something to do with it too. My sense of what home is has changed, and realizing that in some ways, every home is still home, and every home I've lost, every home I've gained, that the home is the sum experiences of anything that you felt is home, and that it lives in me, right? It lives always in your spirit. So the golf motel is gone, but it's still home, right? Like, so the idea of homeland of the body, right? Or homeland of my body. And so it's also, in a way, I've been thinking about it as a series of attempts at surrender. So one is surrendering that ego that is in some ways the one that wants to find home in paradise and live happily ever after, right? And is driven somewhat by that egoic sense of place, of wanting to own place, right? The other is a surrendering to my art and realizing that my poetry itself is a kind of home and a place I exist, and perhaps the most permanent one, perhaps. And also in some ways, letting go, surrendering the inherited trauma also of my family and of exile. I've done what I could to work with that and heal my mother and whatnot through writing. Not heal my mother, but it's part of the story that I also have to just, admit, you gotta lift that off and just go in a different direction. So all that is sort of in there, and poems dotted throughout. Also, ironically, I ended up moving back to the same neighborhood that I lived in Surfside, Florida, when I left to Hartford. So there's this weird, but I still have my main place, and and now I'm in a different phase where I feel like I don't need to pick and choose. I don't need to pick and choose identities or places. I can be all these things again in me. So this is a beach poem, I guess, from Surfside, and so you understand the context of coming back to this place. It's really weird. The building I used to live in, Surfside likes to preserve facades, and so the building's from 1929, and so now they have this huge condo in the back, but they kept the facade, part of the facade, and my dining room window, my kitchen window, they kept. So I'm like, this is so cool. So that's not in the poem, but this is a little bonus. Once upon a time, upon a time, Surfside, Miami. Once and once again, I am as I remember myself. 30 years later, I can still savor the sway of these palms, fanning this same wind into syllables whispering, good morning, in my eyes. Saving these todays that I can no longer hear how to live out this passion for breaking myself into poems like this. Like these waves that once upon a time are again my loyal loves, still kissing my feet. As I stroll this shore and glance back at my footprints, again washed away. The salty salve of these breezes I breathe, living once again with all my joyous regrets for all I've done right or wrong, for all I am now, that is enough, yet not enough, for who I wanted to be once, still searching the sea, still facing the same new horizon. I ask again, who am I? What should I do? The answer, as always, everything. This is, pardon my French, I want to speak French. This is just when you've just really had a bad day. And, or rather a series of bad months in well, not bad in bad things happen, but just stress and so much that you take on and this moment where you just have to let it all go. And as you can tell, the beach for me is like my church. I don't want to give you the whole answer. Anyway, I stayed at the Betsy Hotel. They have an arts room, a writer's room, long story, but it took me 3 days to decompress and I couldn't even write a poem. I'm supposed to sit in the writer's room and write, and I was like, ooh, I can't believe that. And then finally I go to the beach, the third day, it was almost like Jesus on the third day. And this poem just came out, and I was like, damn, that's what I needed, right? And it's why I needed to is the title. Why I needed to. Because I faithfully replied to every email from the absurd gods of urgency who punish my good deeds by leaving me empty when I empty my inbox. Because I praise hating myself, broken into my calendar's time-slotted tasks, slicing me thin with the thick duty of being everything yet nothing to anyone, not even me. Because I remember birthdays but often forget my own and my mother's. Because she is bittersweet as the Cuban coffee she brews after Sunday dinners. Because she loves me only in the language of her cooking my favorite dish, shrimp enchiladas. Because of my bland father sunk in his armchair without me on his lap. Because he never told me his life story I read only in the half moons of his eyes, the morning he gazed into mine and died. Because my brother and I need to drink to share our shared hurt at happy hour, so unhappily grateful for love's incredible wreckage. Because my husband, who's still scared of his adoration for me, as we embrace sleep, still doubts how long I'll nest my dreams in his arms. Because I have never quite told him, always. Because I'm just as afraid of needing him more than myself, because I'm not the one I've curated on Instagram, oh so humbled by, oh so grateful for, so many posed blessings with my posed selves, because tonight, I again remember I'm nothing more than a mirage, slowly disappearing on my porch, sitting with half the life I have left. Because I'm still trying to piece how I fit into the puzzle of the constellations, because I've drank their shots of light and too many martinis, because I'm cheering mindlessly the moon to my wish for immortality amid the clouds of my own cigarette smoke, because I should quit doubting my life will be more than these anonymous bones, because I need to believe in something else truer than me. That's why today I had to take myself away to the beach, because I needed to imagine my father as that father at the shore, handing a bouquet of seashells to the sun, because I needed to taste that love can be as simple as a mother remembering to pack sodas and sandwiches, because I needed the seagulls tending the horizon to teach me again to be as still as them, to peer calmly into the void of the sky's eye face, because I needed to hear the waves break, 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 and break me into the lines of this poem, because I needed to burn, to see myself shine just as beautifully as the rosy glow of the sunlight bathing my closed eyes. Couple more things. I'm wondering if I should read. Just thinking what I'm in the mood for. Who's speaking to me? I guess I'll read this one. This is called Self to Self. It's kind of a note to myself. Again, I don't know what these kids want me to say about them yet, but I got really obsessed with the difference between joy and happiness, and thinking about the differences of those two things and what they imply in our lives. So yeah, this is me talking, part of me talking to the other part of me. Self to self. What have you yearned for all your life, Richard? You who's aged in me. Do we know enough now to know that our answer isn't happiness? Not the sweet petals of some flower we've imagined should forever scent our hearts. Not the nomad clouds we've tried to hold still in our eyes, long enough to see our soul eternally at home in them across the homeless sky. Not the face of the moon, a mime whose gestures of shadow and light have entertained our desire for immortal glory. Not the persistence of waves we've wanted to believe are as fated and willed as we've wished to be. Oh, Richard, have I been asking you the wrong question? Maybe it's not what we've yearned for, but what we've always lived on. Isn't our answer the joy of all the temporal moments that grace us? A bud just before it blooms or leans into its wilt. A cloud just before it's sighed from a wave's wisp and drifts into the destiny of wind. The dark moon free of our eyes just before it ascends into the slavery of its sunlit cycles. Tides just before the purpose of ebb and flow. And Richard, just before we are Richard, just before the greed of our ego rises, needing to shine before we slip into yet another day. We doing time? Yeah, okay, so two more. And then, already talking to me. So this is called Writing Home. So it's kind of also like an ars poetica, which is a poem that sort of talks about the art of writing or writing in some way. That reveals, like a meta poem, reveals its own writing. I should have printed this out. And that's another thing that's going to eyes. I should have printed this out over here and put the font. So you'll forgive me. I've never read this one yet, so this is debut for y'all. Writing Home. I've straightened the arching fronds of palms into the stiff lines of poems that pity them for knowing no other home but the patch of sand where they were born to die. I've considered seagulls as a simile that envies their home as the invisible wind, the expansive ocean and earth I can't soar above. I've repeated images of waves and waves, marveled at how they dive, seep secretly to the pores of sand, back into the homeland of their own seas, again and again, as I wish I could. I've personified the moon, needing it to speak in the voice of my soul to myself, lost in the sky of my own boundless darkness, yet at ease in the universe of my loneness. I have given verse to the epic lifeline of stones, once molten souls spewed from volcanoes' mouths. Then their hardening, their weathering into pebbles, I get to behold in my fists as mute metaphors for my own journey's questions of where I began, where I will end. I've jotted down the beats of rain that rhyme with the soft syllables of snow, tasking me to ask myself if I could ever be as fluid and homeless. I have made an allegory out of wildflower seeds, how they surrender their destiny to the wind-borne miles that blow them to root in my tamed garden. Maybe this is their home more than it will ever be mine. Though I've rendered my poems with images of them, that's what I'm wondering tonight. If every line I've ever written, or will, is merely a long road that dead ends, always breaking on the thought that my ultimate home is ultimately some wordless place. So, I'll close on this poem, which is compared to the shitty day of why I needed to. This is one of those great days. Like you just wake up just full of gratitude and everything feels like complete. And despite the title, but it's called A Good Day to Die. It's kind of ironic. And as I said, there's a lot of the new poems are attempts at surrender, because true surrenders, I'm not sure I'm there yet, but so this touches upon that too. A good day to die. When there's nothing but a knowing, when you wake up to the stare of your dog's eyes like tiny brown suns shimmering with the truth of all you are before the alarm rings. When you lock your door, turn up the volume and dance barefoot, swaying alone with your eyes closed, your robe open to the world, and all you lust for is a song to hold your body. When you beam a good morning at the post office or great to see you at the market, meaning every word, cut by your lips into little jewels that sparkle with syllables of kindness. When you toss your to-do list in the garbage, waste yourself in the lazy beauty of being witness to the gestures of an oak, or a squirrel's dramatic pause, or the frenzy at the bird feeder. When you sit under the clouds for dinner, filled with gratitude for more than bread, and say grace for dusk's feast of savory hues, and the dessert of sugary stars that indulge your soul. When you smile back at your smile floating in the fog of the bathroom mirror, your faint yet fulfilled eyes return the gaze of God within you, pleased with the honest life you've given yourself. When all that's left is a knowing, that you don't need to know yet another home in some new city for the love of something other than you, blanketed in the peace of your own bed, ready to die with all you are or aren't, all you've given or gotten, all you've believed or doubted, all you've done or haven't done, ready to kiss the moon's cheek goodbye forever. but the moon says no. Thank you. This, by the way, I failed to mention, it's very special, but this is my first official. I had a big thing planned in Maine and Portland, but the shooting happened and we had to cancel. So this is the first real debut of the book here, right here. Next time, there's a so I'll take some questions of any kind.
The first questions about this book, so pressure's on.
Oh yeah, the first question. Or anything else. I mean, just, sure.
What's the whole thing about you and cheese that comes out of a can?
I'm sorry?
Aren't you the one who loves to put cheese?
Yeah, that's from the memoir. Yeah.
What's with that? I mean,
Well, it actually has to do a lot with the first poem, right? So I grew up without any of those foods, like because we only went to the Cuban. This is cheese with cheese. Easy cheese, the one that comes in the can and you spray. And so it was like, it's the opposite, like, like people were like, oh my God, plantain, it's like I had the same fetishizing of Cuban stuff, like, because we didn't have it, and it was super expensive too. Like, I mean, the Cuban bodegas, we had all our staples, super cheap, and so whenever I would get treated to something like that, it was like I have a can of cheese at home. I still can. And it makes me feel so American, like it's just. But food is such a cultural signifier, right? And so, yeah, foods and all those sitcoms, the Brady Bunch, all that. I thought that was the America that I thought really existed as I was growing up. Yeah.
As you write your poems, do you speak them?
Yes, I mean not right at the beginning. Usually when I get first a draft that I can live with, I think. That I know will be revised, I do read them out loud. It's a form of writing. It's a form of editing. If there's something I'm tripping over, I don't feel in my body, or I'm jumbled by it, that means to me that writing needs to be distilled a little bit, or needs to be sanded, like my editor, my agent says. It's a little sanding. It's all these agent words that are clear for like, yeah, you need to revise that. Try to be so nice. But yeah, there's a lot to the sound. And of course, being we all know, poetry's DNA is for hundreds of years, before it was ever on the page. And something different when you go to poetry reading, because the inflections, the cadences, the pregnant pauses, all this stuff, the page can only hold so much musicality, right? So I'm not reading my poems, I'm singing them. To me, it's the same idea of like when a poet, when you're reading the lyrics, but when you hear the songwriter, the singer sing those lyrics, it's a whole different experience. Because poetry is music at the end of the day. It's music and drama. Well, I've learned to really love it because I think it's part of my craft now, and if I'm going to be up here, I might as well have, a good time. And that's also, I disappear. You saw me probably like drift off sometimes. Like I just get into that moment again. It feels like singing a song that's very close to you sometimes. So, I've gotten to really love or embrace it as part of, like I said, like this moment is kind of like the next phase of the poem, right? That now they live on, and I'll start reading them differently over time. I might even edit them again, just for oral, not necessarily on the page. So it is an interesting dynamic.
You can tell how much it means to you as you're reading. You just feel it. It's like it wouldn't sound the same coming from you. It's coming.
Well, I always tell people like. Read them out loud because it's part of the pleasure of poetry. Don't worry about how I read them either. Like, we sing along, like I can't sing like Beyonce, but I'm still like putting it on it, like, I take my own because I feel it, right? Like, so I said, don't worry about how you're supposed to read it, but it's more like your own interpretation, how your body is feeling it.
And also you read it a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
So,
it's
and like some of those older poems, I haven't probably memorized. I just have the crush of the book, but they come from my body. They don't come from my mind anymore. It's again like singing, it's like singing Fire and Rain, and I still don't get bored because I go back into that emotional space of when that poem happened.
That's what we feel.
Yeah. My goodness, I think that's a question. Yeah, that's what I was saying, like, they're kind of like newborns. I mean, friends that I just met, like, or children that are just born, and I don't know what they're gonna grow up to be. Or if they're gonna hate me, or if they're gonna love me, or what. They're gonna, so, and you also don't know, it's really odd, because you also don't know, you have your favorite poems, but sometimes you're totally misguided, like, and usually it's the problem poems the ones that give you a lot of trouble. It's like the child that gives you a lot of trouble, and finally makes it to med school, like you're the one, okay, like, my son made it to med school. But the ones that are too easy, I say, oh, that's too easy, it must suck, right? And it's, sometimes the hard ones are good, and sometimes the easy ones do suck, but it's really hard to tell. And readings are a place to sort of test, vet that. And also, again, am I feeling it enough? And then maybe I'll read a new poem and I'm like, okay, that one I'm really, is becoming a friend more. Yeah.
Are there any poets that you return to and read over and over again?
Yeah, there's primarily Elizabeth Bishop, and I think besides her craft, which she's a very imagistic poet as I am, in some ways I sense a sense of a big question of home in her work, because if you're a history, she was effectively orphaned when she was 4 years old, and so I sense in her work always trying to connect with place somehow, not as emotionally as I do, but like there's something seething in there. So there's a new poem in the book called Visiting Elizabeth, and it's a glosa, which is old Spanish form from Cervantes days. And what it is, you use epigraphs, quotes from a poem by Elizabeth Bishop, and then you have to end each stanza with that quote. And so I've been to her house in Key West, and stood there in the yard and cried. I've been to her house in North Haven Island in Maine, and went with the governor, and we were totally trespassed on the property. It's just I'm the governor. She loves poetry, so that's why. And then I didn't see her house in Brazil, but I had that's also in the poem when I lived in Brazil. I took a Brazilian lover, I think, just because I wanted to be like Elizabeth Bishop. It was close to, but it was on the outskirts of where she used to live. It was too far. So anyway, I turned to her for that. I also say, it's not always favorite poets, but also favorite poems. They keep on teaching you so much. Well, I should say I made bounce off also to Mary Oliver, Robert Cass, some of the people actually that I read in grad school that just really imprinted on me. I still read. But there are also idea of favorite poems, right? Because we know that every poet, not every, most poets' entire body of work, there's not every poem is not like an A poem, right? And I think you connect with them for other reasons, not just the writing, but I still read the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, and it still continues to teach me. And I have to read it out loud with my friend Nikki, and we just have a couple martinis and get on the phone, and it keeps on teaching you. There's this line that I never got, which is this, where he says, "Do I dare eat a peach?" It's a persona poem for those who might not know, in the voice of a middle-aged person, a middle-aged man, J. Alfred Prufrock. And that line, "Do I dare eat a peach?" I'm like, what's he talking about? And then a few years ago, I got diverticulitis, really acute diverticulitis in the hospital for 5 days, and I couldn't eat for a month. It was crazy. And I called Nikki and I said, "Do I dare eat a peach?" I was like, oh, he's talking about suddenly we have digestive issues. I can't eat a peach. There was a question here, and then did you have a question or someone? Yeah.
A lot of these questions, come together. I wanted to thank you. North Haven, I'm very familiar with. I lived in Maine for many years.
Oh, yeah.
And I wondered how long you were there, but also the way you go back, you can bring out things in me that are very, very old. And now they come up emotionally through these poems and on much of your work. And it's like yesterday.
Yeah.
And I can either clear them up or rediscover parts of myself. And you, I've often walked into Joyce Tennyson's kitchen and seen the same photos that you've seen. of
Oh,
her.
really?
And you know, they're huge.
Yeah, they're
and
huge.
so it's like walking in to beauty and letting it hold you.
Yeah.
And your poems can do that for me. And so I was really interested that you didn't know what to say to Joyce when you first saw them.
No.
And then you went back in this book and then you wrote a poem.
Yeah.
And it was really fascinating.
Yeah, I wrote it for her. But so Joyce Tennyson is an amazing photographer that I didn't know to get your name there so we can chat. She, if you see it, you'll go, oh yeah, I know that from I've seen these photos. They're incredibly, they're so iconic. And one of the avant-garde women photographers, but she lives in Camden. Rockport. Don't confuse Camden with Rockport in Maine. They're right next to each other, but and so there's a lot of poems in there. And the book is broken into two sections of new poems that bookend. And the first section, there's a lot of dialogue with other artists, with Hemingway. I stayed at Hemingway's house in Ketchum for 2 weeks, which is where he died by suicide. Poems to photographers, including Joyce. And again, like I said, I felt like art and my art is another kind of home. And so that first section ends with the Surfside poem, and then you begin the journey. So it's the middle part of the book is kind of a flashback that then takes you back and then ends where I am now. But to comment on your comment, that's the same process I go through, and that's why I'm addicted to writing, because there's something, as I tell my students, it's not a poem until you discover or something comes up in you different and new, and that's what art is about. And I think that energy is then transmitted that's the beauty to the listener or to the reader. But it's the same process for writer. I mean, a lot of times I don't know where a poem begins exactly. I just feel something, and then you keep on using language to dig and dig and dig and dig and dig and dig, and I know when that happens in a poem, and it's actually a moment of transcendence or of great gratitude, where whatever you came to the page with is suddenly revealed, and also in a way let go of, or reconfigured in a way, and it's the moment where art happens for me. And then, people say, especially younger students, they think, don't you feel exposed? I'm like, no, it's not. That's the artist. That's not the guy that changes the cat litter. It's not the guy that freaks people off on I-95. It's the artistic persona, and you need to keep that to stay healthy too. But it's even when I'm up here, it's a different Richard. Yeah, I mean, that as I tell me, my students are like, oh, don't you feel exposed? I'm like, no, it's like. Not that I don't feel them personally, of course, like you were commenting, but it's not art, and it's, as we like to say, once you finish a poem, it's no longer yours. It's whatever it means, it's someone else. But it's also like, you paint a painting, and there it is on the wall. It's all you. It came from all your chaos and all your joys and all whatever it is and all your physicalness of right. But now it's painting, and it's not that you're detached from it, but it's also it becomes something you look at that's different, and so yeah. So thanks for that. Yeah.
Was there a pivotal moment when you were aware that your wanderlust was over?
I'm thinking it's now. Actually, this is.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
Was there a pivotal moment when you realized your wanderlust was over?
I think this is the most pivotal. I think when I moved to Maine at first, I was sort of getting there, but then again the White House and so I went back on the searching for home bandwagon, and then I felt totally like, okay, I'm finally embraced by America. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Reading a poem at an inauguration, and then that's it. I was like, put away Cuba, I'm done. Finally America. In fact, I told my mother when we were sitting there, I guess we're finally American. But then I think the State Department or the White House was out to kill me. So then they asked me to write a poem and read it at the reopening of the U.S. Embassy in Havana. So then I started thinking, oh no, maybe I'll get a little place in Barbados Beach. Maybe I am Cuban after all. And of course that went to pot. I know that. And that started triggering me into thinking, even at that age, I still think I had to pick something, right? Mm-hmm. And that sort of got me on this train of saying, you know what, I don't have to pick, I can be all these things. I can be American, Cuban, And it's like, dog, did it take me this long to figure that out? But it's more than figuring it out, it's to feel it emotionally, right? And so I think this is part of what's going on in the new poems of this book. And I think there might still be another iteration of some other sense of home. I mean, I'm thinking Spain for some reason, like, I don't know why, like, because of our Spanish roots, I'm like, but for now I'm fine. And Maine, Miami, there's a poem there called Maine yet Miami, and I'm like transposing like the two places, like, I'm here, but I'm there, I'm here, but I'm there, I'm here, but I'm there. So, because home, you know, it's like asking what is love, and it's like, it constantly changes as we change, as circumstances change. It's a perennial question, and it's, you know, it's in all our traditions of faith, this idea of paradise, of home, of returning someplace. It's also in our literature. So anyway, all right, a couple more questions, yeah.
Well, first of all, you made me cry, and this was a beautiful experience. And I love your line, I'm a mirage. It's amazing.
I'm sorry?
Well, when you talked about being a mirage,
Mhm.
that's just amazing. And made me think of the writing of a Buddhist leader that you might be like, Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
He wrote extensively about this poem, and I'm just like, wow, it's so reflective of other sides of the same journey.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, writing is in a way a spiritual practice for kind of those same reasons of discovery and exploration, but also questioning and refining one's life and one's belief systems and what we really feel. But yeah, and again, like the mirage, it's kind of like what I feel like sometimes. Like there's kind of, I guess, that artistic persona that is in the world that's a better person than me somehow, like knows a lot more than me, like is whose soul is salvageable. but thank you for that, because I think this is ultimately why I do what I do, is for people again to own that and feel it and cry. And I say it ain't a poetry reading until somebody cries and laughs as well.
Do you journal as part of your process?
Not really. Everybody has a bit of a different process. I just keep a little notebook where I jot down little things that happen, and then I know there's something triggered, and I just try to write it down so that it makes the physical connection between my hand and my mind and my body, so I don't just forget it. Like on the way over here, I was driving from Fort Myers. And it's such a beautiful sky today, and then I'm listening to Crosby, Stills and Nash, and the sky, and I'm crying, and I'm like, okay, I need to write this down. I don't know what it means yet, so I don't journal per se. I think my drafts are my journaling in some way, so I keep everything in one file. So you see the very start of a poem, which is usually gibberish and just free writing and kind of like journaling, and then slowly start finding the craft and the art and the inner self, the truer self within that experience.
I am very curious, how did you make the jump from civil engineering to poetry?
To poetry, yeah. It wasn't really a jump. It was, so part of the circumstances were, of course, as a working class immigrant kid, and the cultural divide, right? It's not my parents denied me the arts, but it just wasn't in the realm of a possibility. We weren't talking about the costs around the dinner table. Plus, they didn't even know who Robert Frost is, or like even the Rolling Stones. So like, there's no possibility there. Also, my grandmother was very homophobic. There's poems in there, and she was my primary caretaker. So. At one time I wanted to study architecture, and she thought that was too gay. So I had a lot of boundaries that were directing me. Plus I was always a left brain, right brain kid. I still love everything. And so I was actually better at math in terms of grades and English. And so I studied engineering. And when I started working as an engineer, half my job is writing, which I profess all the time to engineering students. And also to English class students that think, oh, I'm never going to have to write because I'm studying engineering. Or guess what? You're going to have to write almost no matter what you do. And so I started, reports and studies and suddenly understanding language in a different way, understanding tone, audience, and then, and also writing proposals, which are narrative and hyperbole and like exaggerating your vision for the project. And when you win a proposal for $40 million, guess who gets the promotion? So anyway, it tickled like something in me, and I only really realized this fairly recently. I was still like, I was asking myself the same question. Are you sure about this? Like, how did that happen? I think since I don't remember ever not knowing 2 languages. So I remember translating for my parents when I was like 4 years old, like small words. So I don't know that I even had a first language, because at 2 I'm put into somebody's house that was taking care of kids, and I remember little Jay, African American kid in New York. I remember he taught me English like in a day. Like it's at that point you're just like a sponge. And I think that imprinted in me a fascination with language, and not taking language for granted, also realizing that language was a way of not only communicating, but a way of thinking and feeling and breathing, and language was power. I'm translating for my parents, and as I got older, like my parents learned English but were terrified to speak it, and so you'd leave Miami and like we got away with murder. We'd like tell them whatever we wanted. Like, no, you gotta go over here. Like, no, the hot dogs are only 50. And I think that's why I ended up going down the pipe. But I never traded one for the other, because essentially there is, like I like to say, I really wanted to go into poetry full time because there's so much money in it. But I also love the balance, and so I never quit my engineering all through grad school, and pretty much I took a little hiatus, but I was doing engineering, engineer by day, poet by night, and I liked that. For me, it worked. Now my entire life is all poetry, including teaching, and I'm finding it hard to be able to detach myself from that to write, because writing is another capacity, right? And sometimes you're just so immersed in it. So I'm having the challenge of finding ways to relax and distract myself or do something that isn't surrounded around poetry, though it's living the dream as well. So I can't, like my Mickey says, no crying on the yacht. So there's another question.
If there's no more, let's start the signing.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, so let's
Thank you.